I don't really think of it as a way of selling prints, to be honest. It's more that I just love it. Love sharing the print process. So when it comes out, people always ask what paper it is. So I'll show the box of paper and we'll go through the choice and things. And I find it's always a good conversation starter.
Just hearing you talk about all this makes me really happy because I feel like your strategy is like, I'm just going to be who I am. Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 390 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen with your host, Matt Payne. This week on the podcast, I had a blast chatting with UK photographer Jack Lodge. Jack is currently living his dream as a full-time landscape photographer, having newly taken on the challenge of fulfilling his dream in 2022. Jack is surely one of the most passionate photographers that I've spoken to on the show, and I think everyone will get a kick out of listening this week. Did you know that this podcast is completely listener supported? There are no corporate sponsors. I do all of the editing completely myself. It takes a lot of my time to reach out to guests, research them, and come up with compelling questions, and of course, to edit and produce every single episode. I was recently asked by a listener, but how can I support the show? There's lots of ways to support the show, including leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or by subscribing on YouTube. But the best way is to financially support the show on Patreon. By supporting the show on Patreon, you gain access to over 220 bonus episodes and, depending on your level of support, access to episodes early. Just go to patreon.com/fstop and listen. That's patreon.com/fstop and listen. Thanks to everyone who has already stepped up to support the show, including our latest supporters, Eric Lawn, Nina Fuller, and Adrian Klein, for stepping up to keep the show going. By the way, be sure to stay tuned to the very end to learn about some awesome discounts offered by today's guest for his photography course. Cheers. Okay, let's get to this week's conversation with Jack Lodge. All right, Jack Lodge, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, Matt, it's an absolute pleasure. Sorry for taking so long to join in. I know I had to cancel because on the back of a few workshops, I was exhausted, so my voice just went. So hopefully I sound a little bit better now.
Man, no worries at all. I've had to do that a couple of times over the years, so I totally get it.
Yeah, but we're together now, so we can make the most of it now.
Yeah, no, of course. And you've come recommended a few times now. One of my longtime listeners and Patreon supporters, Michael Rung, wanted to hear you on the podcast. So I'm glad that we could finally make it happen.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, I know Michael. So that's awesome. Oh, God, the pressure's on now. I wasn't nervous. Now I am. I've listened to so many of your podcasts. Like, I'm a big podcast person. I don't listen to the radio. So I always have yourselves and other podcasts on the car all the time. So it's quite weird to be on this end of it, I must admit.
Yeah, no, it's always weird on being on this end of it, knowing that about my guest, because it's like a little unfair, right? Because you kind of know me a little bit and I know really nothing about you. So you kind of have an advantage over me.
Yeah, it's quite weird because, we literally have never talked until this moment. But yeah, your voice has always been in my head from podcasts. So yeah, it's very strange.
Right. Well, Jack, for people who aren't familiar with you and your photography, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing, yeah. My name is Jack Lodge. I'm located down in Dorset in the UK, which is literally right on the south coast. So we are blessed with sunrise, sunset, countryside, seascapes, woodland. So it really is a playground. And I kind of stumbled upon photography accidentally. And that's a really weird thing to say. I've not got the whole photography background. It's actually architecture was my focus. So I went to uni. I studied to become an architect. And my tutor said, Jack, you should get a camera and document your travels. Because we used to go to all these cool places in Europe. And I was taking pictures of street photography, architecture. I had no idea what settings were, no idea what cameras were. And I just got hooked, man. And then literally I graduated, got a job, and my first paycheck bought a mirrorless camera. And I was like, I'm going to be in an office 9 to 5. I need to get out. So I then was just like, I'm going to do sunrise and sunsets and scout and recce. And I just got addicted. And then I got on the whole social media platform and just really enjoyed sharing my work with other people, and some people that can't get out and see what we see. So yeah, it was all kind of just like a crazy 3 or 4 years where it was just like me just doing what I love. And then in 2022 August time, I quit my job and do it full time. So yeah, now I run workshops, tuition, work with brands, do talks, presentations, and yeah, in a weird bubble, mate. I'm not going to lie. It's been a crazy 2 years.
Yeah, that sounds like quite the whirlwind, quite the journey. I would love to hear you talk a little bit about kind of what that transition looked like for you, because I know for
Mm.
some people, they get forced into it, like they get laid off or they have like a weird life circumstance that is like, well, I guess I'll do photography. But it sounds like in your case, it was a very intentional career change. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, really, because I never saw myself doing this full time. Because first and foremost, I just love the outdoors, and I say this to everyone: like, even if I go out with my camera and don't get a picture, I'm still like the craziest, happiest guy ever. Normally lose my voice. We're high fiving with people just because like it's awesome to be out. And the transition was an odd one because I was loving architecture, but it got to a point where I just wasn't thinking about my day job. Like I'd go out for a sunrise that morning, get back in the office like 8, 9 o'clock, and I'd be like just thinking about that photo or that moment. I was like, okay, I need to process. I need to share this online, and just got absolutely obsessed with it. So for about 5 years, and this must have been 2014 to 2021, I was literally just working probably 3 jobs. I was doing my day job, I was doing photography at sunrise and sunset, and then a lot of people don't talk about this, but the marketing side of it was another job,
Mm.
like the whole Facebook, Instagram, website. So it was full on, but like looking back on it, it wasn't, because like I'm doing the same now, really, and it doesn't really feel like work. It's a weird old thing. So the transition mainly was just getting to a point where I was selling calendars and prints. I'm massively into my printing, and that was kind of like a little side income that would pay for new lenses and cameras and things. And then in 2021, just at the end, I had so many people over the last 3 years asking me to run workshops and tuition, and I do not have a lot of confidence. Like I suffer from imposter syndrome so bad. And I would always pass them on to my friends or local professionals in Dorset and be like, no, go to these guys. They know what they're doing. And then one of my really close friends, Andy Farrer, I had a conversation with him. I was like, I'm getting all these questions. Do you mind if I do this? Like, am I treading on your guys' toes? Like, I felt really weird about it. And he was like, don't be silly. Like, you're bringing new people to landscape photography. So go for it. So I spoke to my work and I was like, right, I want to go down to part-time and I'm going to do my photography. And I launched workshops, and I launched 3, and they all sold out in 5 minutes. And I was just like, oh, maybe there is like an audience for this. Because I didn't think there was. I thought, honestly, it was just calendars, prints. And then the demand like really increased. So I agreed with my work to go down to 3 days. And then my fiance, who's my now wife, Rihanna, just said to me one evening, why don't you just quit? Like, just quit. She was just like, just do it. And I was like, really? Like, what if it doesn't work? And she said something which was like really awesome. She was like, if you don't do it now, you'll probably never do it, because you'll always have it as like a plan B, whereas you should have your photography as your main plan. So yeah, I quit and just jumped on it. And yeah, best decision ever, because like 3 months after that, we found out we're having a baby. So the timing, mate, was unbelievable, because I probably wouldn't have done it. I'm not going to lie. The security would have scared me, but yeah, it all worked out for the best in the end.
That's brilliant. Yeah, no, as you were talking, I was like nodding my head because I was like, yeah, that's exactly how it was for me too. I would go out and shoot as much as I possibly could, and then all I wanted to do was process and share my photos. And then I wanted to like try to slowly build up the marketing side of things, but I'm still
Yeah,
have a full-time job that's salaried and lots of weird hours, and it's like you're basically working 90 hours a week to maintain the two
it is.
lifestyles, right? But what's interesting, like you said, is that that's actually kind of a really good test, right? Like
Yeah,
if you can pull that off for 2, 3 years, then you can probably sustain a full-time landscape photography career.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, unless you're one of these freak show marketing geniuses, that's probably what it's going to take to maintain a certain level of income.
Yeah, you nailed it, mate. You nailed it. Because like I get it asked all the time, kind of like, oh, how do you do it? Like, do you not fall out of love with it? And like what you said, you live and breathe it for that many years that when you do make the jump, there's kind of, I never felt a difference other than the fact that I could now put 100% into it. I didn't have
Yes.
my main job as a hindrance kind of thing. Like it was like, okay, everything's unleashed now. You actually have to make it work. And I love that pressure. My mates always say to me, oh, you've always got plan B. You can always get back into architecture. And I was like, no, I don't. Like in my head, I've already cut that out. So I don't have an option to fail, which keeps me even more motivated because I don't have that plan B. So, and because I love, like yourself, you love business kind of side of things. Like it's kind of the best of both worlds, really. And then photography is just literally the best thing in the world. Yeah, I can't bang on about how much I love photography.
Yeah, maybe real quick, tell me kind of like the breakdown of your time spent versus like photographing, editing, social media, marketing. Like, how would you kind of break out the amount of time you spend on each activity now as a full timer?
Oh, that's a really my own photography, or including when I'm teaching intuition,
Yeah,
because
like
it's probably very different.
the whole package.
The whole package. I'd probably say 50 to 60% of my time is spent running workshops and one-to-ones. So
Mm-hmm.
that's out with a very small group of three or just one person. I'd probably then say 20% of my time is myself, like going out for my own photography. That like I just got back from the Dolomites and I went to Skoma, and that was all for me. And I needed it because I had such a busy spring. I needed those 2 weeks. So I probably have 2 or 3 weeks a year. And then I'd probably say the last 30% is the business side of it, which is the marketing, the admin, the kind of like business planning, I guess, is kind of like just being organized and stretching your wings with income streams and thing, which I love. I'm obsessed with that. I don't want to put like all my eggs in one basket because I'm one of those weirdos that started this full time after COVID. So I don't have that experience of what happens when everything stops. And that really scares me. So like I try not to put everything into workshops just in case that ever happens again, like God forbid. But yeah, I've only got 2 years of full-time experience, but then I guess I got 5-6 years of part-time experience, I guess. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
the whole professional thing freaks me out. It's kind of like, oh, it is my main income now. I don't like to call myself a professional. I just say I'm a photographer. That's what I do.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I noticed that you're quite active on social media. I'd be curious to hear you talk a little about how much effort and time do you put into managing social media and putting
Mhm.
posts out there and engaging with your audience. And I guess a follow up to that is like, do you feel like that's worth like, is the juice worth the squeeze?
I love the way of phrasing that. Yeah, definitely worth the squeeze, mate. Like a big old glass of lemon juice. Yeah, or like just because I have a love-hate relationship with social, we all do, but I literally wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without it. That's how I jumped into being able to monetize it and guess how to do it full time. Just because I actually love sharing my work with other people, and if someone goes out of the way to take that out of their time to leave a comment or something, especially on Facebook, which I find is like the most engaging platform, which might be a bit of a weird thing to say because most people think Instagram or Threads or X or whatnot. But for me, it's Facebook, and I always want to reply to that person. So I do spend a silly amount of time on social media. I must admit, there's no denying it. Just because I like the conversations you make, and then you always make connections. And the amount of projects that have come off the back of just replying to someone online is enormous because you never know who you're talking to or who that person knows. And I like that. I'm not the type of person that will post a photo and then not look at my phone for a few hours. Like I'm posting my photo and then engaging with other people while I'm on there and things like that. Just because I enjoy it. And I guess it's difficult because a lot of people will say, "Oh, do you shoot for social then?" And like that couldn't be further from the truth. Like I still just shoot for me. It's just it's the engaging bit I find really rewarding. So yeah, I do owe a lot to social, but it depends. I think you get what you put in, but it depends on the platform. Like Instagram for photography is really hard right now. I've always had Facebook as my number one, quite different to a lot of people. But yeah, it's a tricky balance for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because on Facebook, I found for whatever reason, I kind of plateaued out. Like, no matter how much effort I put into trying to grow
Hmm.
my accounts, like, it just went nowhere. And so, like, that feels like kind of a waste of time sometime when you're putting so much energy and effort into something and like
Yeah,
there's no tangible result that comes with it. So,
yeah.
and I think there's a lot of people in the last probably 6 to 12 months that have experienced that as well. And so I
Hmm.
feel like it's a weird time for people, especially if you haven't already established your name out there in some
Hmm.
way. I feel like so many people are just like clawing and trying to figure out how to get social media to work.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. And I think I was quite fortunate when I started the Facebook journey, probably 2014 time. That when I did it, I tried to make it as personal as possible. So I never wanted to come across as a brand or a photographer. I always just wanted to be just Jack. So I try to come across as personal as possible and just be me. So I do a lot of live videos. I don't know if that's a thing that you've tried, or but
Mm.
in the field, I'm always like sharing live videos, trying to get engagement, and then I always find people then want to come back that evening to see the photo, or or they'll be at work, and I get told it all the time. They're at work and they're making a coffee, and they see the notification pop up that Jack Lodge is live, and they're like clicking it, and I love that because it's like then I'm not on my own. Because sometimes before I did workshops, I felt super selfish because I'd be witnessing this amazing sunrise or this amazing moment in a woodland, and I'd be all on my own. So being able to take my phone out and bring as many people as possible along with me felt quite nice. It felt less lonely. So I think that was a really good way of building in early stages, and still today, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense. Most of the places I like to photograph, there's no cell service.
Yeah, see,
so
that must be so tricky. Yeah.
so like I can't, I don't have the option to do like a Facebook live like from 13,000 feet in the middle of nowhere in Colorado. So I feel like if I did, that would probably work pretty well. But then on the flip side of that, there has been a few times I've had that ability to do that, and I've had a really hard time staying engaged in kind of being focused as a photographer, as a creative, while
Yeah.
trying to like, I'm holding my phone and
Yeah.
and that's why I more or less kind of gave up vlogging too, because I found like it was really hard to do both well. You know what I
Oh
mean?
man, I don't know how YouTubers do it. I take my hat off to them. I've been out with Nigel, Maz, and whatnot a few times with when they're vlogging, and I'm looking at them. I'm just like, I don't know how you're doing this. Like, it's crazy. Like my focus is always on that camera, and if I'm doing a live, I struggle enough as it is, and I never show my face. I hate seeing my face. So like I'm always just showing the back of the camera, and even then I'm fumbling, and sometimes I have to be like, sorry guys, I got to go. Like I need to get the thing. So I don't know how these guys do it. It's difficult, isn't it? And then especially if you're setting up another camera, is that what you had to go with, like setting the whole camera up, talking to piece of camera, that kind of thing?
A little bit of that, but I was also, like I was using my main camera as the vlogging camera, and then it's
Mhm.
like, okay, I got to take this down now so I can get this shot, so
You just never know when like the best moment is, really, do you? Like you got to keep taking a few shots just in case it disappears.
right. Yeah. And I don't know. I found that, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I find that if I'm not totally immersed in kind of the field craft side of things,
Hmm.
and if I'm trying to focus on like having a conversation with a friend or talking to somebody on Facebook Live,
Yeah,
I don't have the same experience that I really value
yeah,
as a nature photographer. And so I know that about myself now. And so I'm like, okay, I can't use that strategy. So how else can I, figure
yeah.
something else out? So
No,
anyway.
it's so true because you get into this like flow state, don't you? When you're on your own, you're like you forget about everything. So why would you then introduce a distraction? Like I totally get that, and I'm like that as well sometimes. Like sometimes my phone will not even come out of my pocket. Um,
Yeah.
And then I'll get people messaging like, Jack, are you okay? You've not posted in 2 days. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I've just been out or doing things.
So earlier you talked a little bit about how your at the time fiance told you like, just go for it, Jack. Like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to the importance of having a support network or a partner involved in your success?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, Rihanna's just awesome. Like we've been together since we're 15 and we've known each other since we're 14. We're now 30. We got married in November, and the amount of like support we give each other, we like bounce off each other so well. And so she does exactly the same as what I was doing, because we did school. We both went away when we were told we have to come up with what we want to do at uni. So we went away for 2 weeks, didn't talk to each other, and then we got together and oh, okay, what do you want to do then? And we both said architecture. And we were just like, you got to be joking. Like, are we just saying that because we want to stay together at uni or something? But it was just a freak coincidence. So then we went and did that together. So we studied together. So we've been through pretty much everything. And she's always been so supportive of it. So she's not worried about the 3-4 o'clock alarms. She's more than happy for me to go out on my own. And in the early stages, she'd come out with me. We'd go do sunsets together, and she loves the outdoors just as much as me. And as soon as we got a dog, like that was kind of like the kind of like the excuse to get out as much as possible anyway. So yeah, we're always out and about. But when it came to kind of doing it as a career, it was kind of like I was really nervous with it, and she wasn't. She was really supportive. And I'm really lucky that one of my best friends is a real entrepreneur. Oh, that's a horrible word to say. Entrepreneur. Oh, wow.
It is a tough one.
That's going to be great in the podcast. You know what I mean? Business guru-y person. And he kind of started on his own a year prior to me, and seeing him do it and like the motivation he had was like the biggest kind of like boost. I was like, okay, right, now's my time. And Rihanna was kind of just like a supporter of that. So yeah, it was really, really helpful, and also like always good to come back and bounce ideas off someone else. Which helped massively.
So Jack, in our correspondence, you had mentioned to me kind of what you call the 4 Ps that you see as you see those as kind of crucial for anyone wanting to do landscape photography. And the 4 Ps you said were planning, photographing, processing, and printing. Why do you see each as being an important part of this craft?
Oh man, great question. It all came about when I started doing some talks for camera brands, and they wanted like, what is landscape photography? And in architecture, the only way we used to just like pitch our buildings was to break it up into categories, or like the design phase, the development phase, the construction phase. I was like, why didn't I just do the same with photography? So I broke it down, into the planning, because I'm a big believer that planning's so important. Like recceing, scouting, checking weather charts. You know what it's like, man. We have to be meteorologists. It's crazy what we have to go through. So all of that is so important. So I say to everyone, like, you've got to be 25% good at that. Then you've got to know how to use your camera. So the photography part comes in, and you have to be so fluent with it that it is just an extension to your arm. You can create what's in your head really quickly. But then you have to know how to process it, because if you don't, they're just going to stay on that SD card, or you'll never get the same look that you saw with your eyes, or what creative brain you want for that image. And then even then, if it goes on Instagram and Facebook, like, it's such a shame if you don't print it. So then that bit comes into it. And I jumped onto printing super early. So one of my best friends that is a full-time photographer, Andy Farrer, he's massively into his printing. So from an early stage, I was like kind of exposed to that. And I bought a printer just before COVID. And I learned so much about my photography. I can't tell you. Like, my processing changed, everything, every part of the stage changed, down to the timings that came into planning. So all 4 of those, I find if you know a little bit about all of them, it all comes together, and you get not more well-rounded, but like it helps you improve in certain areas. And then from that, after all the camera talks I've done, or the shows I've done, there's been so many more Ps. So then we get perseverance, we get patience, we get professionalism, we get, it just goes absolutely nuts. And then passion's another big one. So like, there's so many Ps, it just keeps going. So among the community now, it's almost just a running joke that there's always another P to talk about with Jack. It's just nuts.
That makes sense. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about how printing your work has influenced not only how you change your planning, but your actual field craft, and of course, how you process your work.
Yeah, man. I mean, so with the printing, as soon as I started getting involved with it at home, I instantly like kind of changed my processing style because it wasn't giving me the effect that I wanted in my head. Like they looked like it on screen, but when they went on paper, I didn't have that kind of artistic feel. And I don't know if that's because of my background in architecture, where we studied a lot of artists and architects that were then inspired by artists. So we were always exposed to it. So I guess it's kind of like just in the back of my mind all the time. So whenever I print, I always wanted to feel a bit like an oil painting, or I know it's cheesy to say, but you know, that ethereal look. And that only comes down to, I find, is the planning stage. So I'm not like fussy with the times I go out, but like I know when we get the right weather, I know where I'm going because I've got a bank of locations like saved. So them two come hand in hand together, and that's only from me printing. Because okay, I need to go back when it's a little bit more misty, or I need the light to come from this side, so I need to go back in autumn. So it really helped. And then I also found that the printing stage was the last part of the processing stage because paper choice is so important. So I work really closely with the guys at FotoSpeed, and we were printing one image of mine on all their paper range. And it was so fascinating to see how warm some papers are, how cool some papers are. So we always say like that the last 10% of processing comes down to the paper choice. And it's so important. And as soon as I started doing that, I was like, right, okay, I need to lock down on two papers that I like and that they work with two different types of photos. So maybe my colorful sunsets go on a brighter, and maybe my ethereal woodland stuff goes on a matte textured paper or something. So yeah, printing just opened my mind to a whole new world. So, and it's escalated just from there, really. Yeah,
I love what you just said, because when it comes to printing, on my side of things, I kind of went through the same process. Like I had a couple of photos printed on 6 or 7 different papers to try to figure out what I liked. And you're right, there's certain types of images that look much better on like a watercolor paper versus like a textured matte paper versus like a semi-gloss, like Canson, Platine, Fiber Rag.
Yeah.
And it's hard because when you're marketing your images to your audience, it's hard to tell people, hey, if you order this kind of photo, it's going to go on this paper. And if you order this kind of photo, it's going to go on this kind of, you know what I mean? So like, I kind of landed on like a happy medium place where I just picked one paper that everything looks pretty great on, but like, obviously there would probably be ways that would look better on like a very specialized paper. So that's been my approach. But how do you kind of translate that marketing side of things in terms of your decision-making process on the artistry side?
Yeah, no, that's fascinating because the way you said that is exactly the same struggle I had because I sold prints for ages, but I never did limited prints. So when I it was just, I think it was just after COVID, I was like, right, I'm going to do limited edition prints. So I'm going to have to take this game up a lot. So I'm going to have to do the whole certificates and do fancy packaging. I want the whole experience. So the paper choice was so important because I wanted everyone to be on the same paper. So what I ended up settling on was 2 different papers. One for the matte finishes, one for the semi-gloss brighter looks. And every time I do an image now and put it on my website for sale, I will print it on both papers, and I'll just pick my favorite, like the paper that like almost asked to be printed on for that certain image. But I've narrowed it down to 2. And then when I sell it online, I will make it quite clear it's on this type of paper. These are the qualities. And over the hundreds I've sold now, only one person got back to me and they said, "Oh, the print's arrived, but I don't like the paper." And it was a woodland scene. So picture like a bluebell woodland, and it was on a textured matte paper. Like it was beautiful paper. The wood looked like it was like flaking on the trees. You can see all the bluebells. And they're like, "Jack, I don't like it. I get all my images printed on high gloss." I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, this is A1, so it's massive. And it cost me a fortune to ship it to you. It's like, so either I'm happy to pay for postage and you can send it back to me and I'll do a full refund, or please take it to your framer, get it mounted, and then let me know what you think. Like, get it mounted, and before it goes in the frame, just let me know what you think. And they called me back a week later, and like, oh, you're so right. Like, because like they were like, oh, I can feel like I'm touching the trees, and like it feels like I'm in the wood. And I was like, there we go. That's like that's how important wood paper choice is. So that's the only, I read it once, and that's it. So thankfully, it's been okay. But like you said, it is hard to get that across, like how important the paper choice is. So that's why like camera club talks and stuff I do with FotoSpeed is so important, because we literally just put the paper under people's noses. And that's the only way you can try it, I think. It's just to literally touch it, feel it, rip it, like just hold it. Like that's the only way you can find out what you like, isn't it?
So do you always print every single image before you offer it for sale?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I really want to get into the habit, and I think it was Erin Babnick that talked about this. We did a Clubhouse when that was a thing back in the day. God, that was a throwback Clubhouse. And we were talking about like how she always prints her images before she even shares them online. And I've always looked at that as like, oh, I'd love to get to that point. Like, I want to be that person. But then I'm too like, I'm like a Jack Russell. I just want to share my work. So like sometimes I just get it out there when I should probably wait another week or two and think more about the processing. So I'm my own worst critic, really. But when it comes to selling the prints, yeah, I'll always live with them. I've got a Stas hanging rail in my office where I'll print them just to A3 or A2 and just live with them for a week or two before I sell them. So at the minute, I've got some moonrise photos that I took at Old Harry, and they've been up there for probably 2 weeks now. And I've just seen today, I want to tweak it a little bit. I want to cool it down a bit for the paper. So when I'm then happy with that, I'll put it on my website and do a newsletter and whatnot. So it's a long process, isn't it? What do you do when it comes down to like selling your prints?
No, it's so funny, man, because as you were talking, I'm like, oh, that sounds genius. But I feel like if I followed that process, I would nothing would be offered for sale. Cause like after sitting with something, after sitting for something for a week, I'll find something I don't like about it. But what I found is that there's lots of my photographs that I don't really like that much anymore, but people still buy them. And so I've come to this conclusion that we can be our worst critics. And I feel like that's such a double-edged sword, because it can get in the way of other people appreciating your photography that might not meet your perfect standards.
Yeah.
And if you do follow that, then your work's going to continually improve. So it's like trying to find that balance of like releasing a little bit of that perfectionism and like letting things out into the world and seeing what kind of resonates for people. That's kind of worked for me, is like, there's probably something about this photo that's not great, but I'm sure someone will like it. So I'm just going to put it out there and see what happens.
Man, it's so true, because like it could be an iconic location where someone's got a special connection with. They don't care if you want to change the white balance by 200 Kelvin. Do you know what I mean? Whereas to us, we're like, that's so important. Like, or the sharpening's not perfect, or I need a bit more texture or something. And like, it just goes, well, these people don't care. Like, so like, yeah, there's such a fine line. And I don't really know what that middle ground is. I think it's more like, yeah, the prints that sell, like, especially mine, they aren't necessarily my favorite pictures.
Right.
I like them. They're in my portfolio, but like, they're not the ones I'm like, oh wow, that took me 3 years to take. It's like the cheesy ones, like the Big Skies or the Corfe Castles and places like that, that sell more. But that's another whole topic, isn't it? It's kind of like, do you sell prints that you like, or sell prints that you know are going to do well? Because having it like something like a gallery is completely different to like what I do. It's just selling online. Like, it's a completely different business model, isn't it, really?
For sure. And I mean, this is going to sound bad, but like, I don't know that there's that many people out there who are selling more than 2 or 3 prints a year. Like, there's a very small number of people out there. I feel like that. I mean, maybe your perception on this is completely different than mine, but in the circles I run in, people aren't selling a ton of prints. So I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about kind of what that marketplace looks like in the UK versus the United States. Because I have several UK photographer friends who they're like, yeah, I maybe sell 1 or 2 prints a year, and they're like some of the best photographers I've ever met. So I'm like, I don't know what the kind of, that's a whole other long conversation too about like how do you
Yeah.
market for printing, but I'd be curious to hear your perception of that.
Yeah, gosh, that no, it shocked me actually because from how I see it, like the US market is like amazing for prints, like in terms of people that want to buy them, because like selling here in the UK is really tricky, I find, because
Right.
everyone wants a print for £10 or something off Etsy. Um, Everyone's really cheeky, like they do not appreciate what goes into it, kind of thing. Whereas all my big stuff always goes to the States or Germany,
Hmm.
sometimes Australia. So yeah, it's a weird one, really. But that shocked me. Yeah, that people sell kind of that many prints a year. But I guess it depends how you market it, doesn't it? Because I could sell anywhere from 5 to 15 a month, like depending on how hard I'm like pushing it. Whether that's newsletter and things like that. But I tell you what does make a huge difference is I do a lot of on my stories, especially. I show the prints. So
Mm-hmm.
like after a shoot, like I'll get home and I'll run it off the printer behind me, and I'll actually do a story of it coming out on the paper, and I'll go right in, man, so you can see the texture of the paper, and then I'll zoom out and I'll put it on the wall, so people are always in the back of their head seeing my work in print, which I then think makes it easier for people to go, "Oh, Jack, can I have a print of that?" Because then it comes down to the whole marketing angle of like people have got to see something 6 times before they actually want to jump on it, kind of thing. So I guess it is how you market it, really. And I do push prints quite hard, but then I'm not. I don't like every time I post an image online, I don't put underneath like for the print, please go to jacklodge.co.uk, blah blah blah.
Right.
Because I find like that's quite like a not a spammy way of doing it, but it's not personal. And I find like if you're trying to sell something to someone, it needs to be more of a personal approach. So I can always tell if someone comments, "Oh, Jack, I love this photo. It reminds me of my dad or a holiday we took." So then I'm like, "Oh, okay, right. Then these people might want to print." So then I'll just mention, "Oh, what a lovely memory. If you ever want a print of this, just please let me know. Happy to sort you out. If it's a print that I'm not even doing yet as a run." And then 9 times out of 10, they'll get in touch one day and just be like, "Oh, Jack, can I get a print done?" So you got to be personal with it, but then, like you said, it requires time, and that's the whole social media thing. It's
Right. And I
tricky.
feel like some people are listening. They're like, oh, that's it. I just have to take a video of it coming off the printer, which by the way is genius. I've done that before, and
Yeah,
it's a very effective way of getting people to really connect with the
it's good
artwork.
for engagement, isn't it? People always want to respond.
And you have to have, before that, you have to have already curated an audience that is going to appreciate it and
Mhm.
like reach out and contact you. Like you can spend as much time as you want creating reels and doing all that stuff, but like until you've kind of over probably several years,
Yeah,
until you've kind of curated that audience of people who follow you, that you can do all the tricks in the trade to generate sales, but you're not going to close any sales until you've curated that audience first, I think.
dude, that's so important, and because like you have to have that audience before you sell anything. Do you know what I mean? And that's what stopped me from doing workshops for so long because I didn't do them. So when I launched it, I was like, "There's no market for it." And I just happened to get really lucky that there was. But with print, it's the same. And what I did is from day one of doing socials, when I had Facebook and Instagram, I was doing prints. I was doing canvases, which I really don't like now. I don't like the look of canvas because I find it distracts from the photograph. But anyway, I did all of that, and I made people quite aware that that's what I was doing. So whether it's like once a week or once every 2 weeks, I'm showing the process of printing. I try and keep it quite relevant, just to keep it on everyone's minds, and that's I don't really think of it as a way of selling prints. To be honest, it's more that I just love it. Love sharing the print process. So when it comes out, people are always asking what paper it is. So I'll show the box of paper and we'll go through the choice and things. And I find it's always a good conversation starter. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I like it from that angle. But yeah, it's a funny world printing because a lot of people think that it's like a main income stream because you're selling prints, but it's really not because like that's just so much of your time. So I always limit it to 1 day a week now. I have like a print Thursday, and I bank up all my prints for that week and just spend 1 day doing them if I can. Um,
Yeah, and I have to tell you, like, just hearing you talk about all this makes me really happy because I feel like your strategy is like I'm just going to be who I am. I'm Jack Lodge, and I'm going to be super excited, not in a fake weird way, but like I'm just stoked about this photo I created, and I'm stoked that I'm printing it, and it's really exciting to me. And I'm just showing people authentically my happiness and excitement, and all the flaws that lie therein, right?
Yeah.
And like the people are going to respond to that positively, whereas I feel like a lot of people are chasing engagement, like especially on threads. You see all of these people,
Oh, yeah.
I hate to use this word, but poop posting. Like
Yeah.
they put out this like really kind of controversial take on something and then say, what do you think? And like the whole reason they're doing it is just to get
Yeah.
engagement. And it's like, can you just be yourself? And like I just want to like block all those people because it's so annoying to me. But I'm
Yeah.
curious how you feel about that.
Yeah, you just got to be yourself. And I've done exactly what you've said. I've done that for engagement, and it happens. And then I'm just like, that's gone nowhere from that point. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to bother again. Because like, you're kind of like, you're trying to get engagement. And it's like, well, there's no connection to it. So it doesn't mean anything.
Right. Like if that's your strategy for
Yeah.
social media, then all you've done is attract people that want to argue with you.
Yeah. It's not the
Like,
right audience. You're not going to get anywhere from it, right? Like, and I think that's the really important thing with social media is knowing your audience. So like I know my Facebook audience is completely different from Instagram. Like if I go to Instagram or Threads, mainly I'm talking or showing my stuff to other photographers.
right.
So like,
Same.
yeah, you
Yep.
know what I mean. So like you're engaging with other photographers, you're talking about work and things like that. And then my Facebook is like everyone, like, and not a lot of photographers, and they're the people that are going to buy the prints. They're the people that are going to want to get into photography, so they're going to book the workshops. And yeah, that does happen on Instagram and things, but I always like word my content differently for that reason. So you've really got to know where your work's going. If you copy and paste everything, you're just going to get frustrated because one might do this reach and this reach, and then you just look at the numbers and like that's just such a slippery hole to go down. Like I never look at my insights because like unless it's for brand stuff and they ask for it, because like there's no point. Do you know what I mean? Like you just got to be you, and if people aren't following along with it, then that's just the way it is, or maybe it's just not happened yet, and maybe you just need to keep being you.
No, I love that. Well, you had mentioned to me that it's been really important for you to kind of have what you would call a focus for your photography. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear you talk a bit more why you believe that and what your focus has looked like.
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple in all honesty. It just comes down to the seasons. That is my focus. So from really early on, I mean, I've always been an outdoor person and I love the change of season. So when I got into photography, I was like, right, I'm just going to follow that along. Like, so in winter, I'm going to, because at the coast, we got the sun rising pretty much southeast, southwest. So we get the sunrises, sunsets. So in the winter months, let's go down to the coast and just capture seascapes. And then spring comes along and I'm like, right, bluebells, garlic, rapeseed fields, like
Hmm.
rolling grass, all the leaves are out, beech trees. So then I'm in the woods. And then summer comes along and I'm like, right, okay, what about a bit of wildlife or butterflies or insects and maybe wheat fields and things. So then my focus turns to that. And then when autumn comes, it's like, right, back into the woods we go. We got autumn color, the sun's coming back around and we can get nice moon rises and things. So that being my focus almost makes my calendar quite simple
Hmm.
because then I'm like always looking forward to something. And that's not saying I don't go off piste. I do, but like it's very rare. Like at this time of year, I'll be down at the coast. Like if you see me post something from the sea, that's like super rare. Just because for me, I'm not interested this time of year. And that's not saying that'll probably change at one point. Do you know what I mean? But it's just having that focus allows me to kind of always keep excited about the next season. So then my focus now is on autumn straight away. So like in July, August time, I'm scouting new places to visit with groups or on my own. And then I'm going to other places. So I just got back from Dolomites, and because all the spring and summer flowers are coming out, that was brilliant. Didn't get a lot of sun; it was just rain and cloud, but we made it work. And then I went straight down to Cornwall and did a bit of macro photography with a guy called Hoddinott, who's an amazing macro photographer, and that like completely changed my perspective again, because that's like something completely new, but something I can do in the summer months when landscape photography is really hard because we have like 18-hour days. So having that focus for me just keeps me motivated, and chasing the seasons. And I know we're quite lucky with the UK, they're quite like regimented, but it is changing quite a lot by like a few weeks each year. So it does keep you on your toes. But yeah, I like having a focus. Do you have a key focus with anything that kind of like gets you motivated for the coming months? Or
No, it's interesting. Over the years, I feel like summertime for me was always climbing mountains and
nice,
photographing big mountain vistas. But now that I'm traveling a lot more, I'm away from home a lot more during the summer. And so my focus has been much more centered around the workshops that I'm teaching through Munch workshops, and
nice.
which has been really fun because it's taking me to all these new places that I've never been to before. So my focus has kind of shifted more towards kind of experience driven
That's awesome.
photography, like kind of showing up to places and with an open mind and trying to interpret it through the lens in a way that I find pleasing to me and that excites me, which sometimes is like, it's so funny. I was recently in Paris, which is not a place many landscape photographers probably would enjoy, but I spent probably 2 hours in a cemetery, this giant cemetery. It's like super famous, like Chopin is buried there and whatnot.
Oh wow.
And I had so much fun photographing old, like peeling metal textures on grave sites and stuff. It
That's
was like,
awesome.
I know that sounds kind of weird, but like I found that to be really, really fun. So I just
Yeah.
show up and look for things that speak to me and try to capture them in a way that interests me. So I know that's overly simplified, but that's literally my approach these days.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing focus to have, though, right? Because you're like going somewhere with an open mind, and you're like, should I photograph the Eiffel Tower? It blew out, or shall I go to the graveyard and focus on some like complex textures and scenes? Like,
And the answer is yes.
yeah, exactly.
You
Like,
should do both.
yes to all of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's what photography is about, isn't it? It's like just throw yourself in. Don't worry about the weather forecast doesn't look good today. Just go out anyway. Like, and find something you're interested in. I think that's a really good focus to have. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I don't know about you, Jack, but I've found a lot of the people that show up to workshops, they have these massive blinders on. Like
Mhm.
they've looked at kind of the itinerary, or they've looked at photographs of the places that we're going to be visiting, and they're like, well, I want to get that photo and I want to get this photo and I need these conditions. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, my job as the leader here is A, to help you make sure you get good photographs, but B, like I want to help you kind of expand your mind a little bit and give
Yeah.
you the creative freedom to find other things to photograph that maybe weren't on your radar.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that so important, man. Like, because like, when are you ever going to get those like dream conditions? Like, it's so
Never.
rare. Like, I've only had it happen once, where I booked a Corfe Castle workshop a year in advance, whole 12 months. That morning came and it was a cloud inversion, and I said to the group, I was like, "This is just complete fluke." Like, I just picked a date in September and we went. Like, that does not happen. So like, fill your boots. Like, just take it where you can. But then like most of my workshops are like, we weather chase, and that sounds really stupid because we don't get storms. Like, we're not talking like storm chasing level stuff, but like on a very low level of that, we're chasing the weather. So I always say to my groups, like, we're going to meet here. This is what we could photograph, and I might send that like a week or 10 days ahead of time. But then on the day, we might change that completely because the weather's an hour away, or this looks better in this light, and you kind of just like you go with the flow. And I found that's worked really, really well because there's always something to photograph. So we had it recently, a really windy day, and it was woodland photography, and the group were like panicking, and I was like, no, it's brilliant. Let's go down this avenue of trees. Let's do a 30-second exposure. And they were like, what? Like, why would I do that? I was like, look at the leaves. And then we got this like real artistic effect. And then everyone was like trying it and getting different like textures and faces in the leaves and all this type of thing. And their whole kind of like brains were just like overrun with like kind of like new possibilities. And then people were lying on the floor photographing dandelions, and like it was wicked. Even though it was a landscape photography workshop where there's big scenes and vistas, our focus completely changed because the weather wasn't ideal or the conditions. So there's always
Yeah.
something to get excited by, isn't there?
Yeah, and I love what you just said there because I love to give people permission to play, right?
Yeah,
Like, and it's gonna sound really stupid, but I kind of like it when the conditions aren't perfect because then it
yeah,
forces people to like, okay, I guess we have to try something different in order to make a photograph today. And then that's when I see people being more creative with their photography and like breaking away from kind of the tropes and like getting the perfect photo of this scene that everyone's already got a picture of. Like that's when people start to get really interesting images. So I
yeah.
like it when that happens.
It's always a challenge. It keeps us on our toes, and it keeps them like, on their creative toes as well. So like there's never a time where nothing's made, right? There's always something to be learned and explored, isn't there?
Absolutely. I would love for you to talk a little bit about what you feel like have been the keys to your success as a photographer, and maybe first talk a little bit about how you personally would define success for yourself.
Oh, that's such a big question. I don't think I've hit it. Like in all honesty, like yeah, I don't really know how to answer that. I mean, I would say like just being myself has been the best thing I could do. Just because like I don't feel like I'm working. Um, I'm just doing what I enjoy. I'm just really fortunate that I can do it every day. But I always say to people, it's no different than when I was at a full time job. Like I was still out at sunrise, still out at sunset, doing all these hours anyway. So I always encourage people not to get disconcerted and don't think I'm out all the time because it is quite similar when I was working a full time job anyway. So like, yeah, never make an excuse. Like there's always those hours in the day, right? Um, and yeah, I think the social media thing for me helped massively. Um, just because it opened up that audience, like that's what it does, right? It opens up new audiences and marketing and things. And yeah, when you refine success, I don't really. I think success for me is being able to wake up and share my passion with others.
Mm.
Like I get the biggest kick out of getting photographs for other people. Like recently, I was on a 1-to-1, and we were in this area, and we're photographing this bar now, and out of nowhere, a buzzard came down and attacked the bar now, and like all of my focus was on my client getting the shot. Like it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen, probably ever will see. Um, but I was like, get the shot. Like this is what we're doing. Is your shutter speed this? Is your aperture here? Make sure your focus is here. All within like 5 seconds while I'm just like pressing the shutter button on my camera while it's on a tripod, like not paying attention. And like her photos were phenomenal, way better than my photos, and I got more of a buzz out of that than I did my own photos. So like we were like high fiving and screaming, jumping up and down, and it's moments like that that make me feel super lucky to be able to do this because I find that more enjoyable than just getting the photos from me. And I don't know if that's just because I enjoy the teaching or not, but I do just enjoy going out on my own as well, but being able to share it with others is so important for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because as landscape photographers, typically, I mean, I don't get the sense this is you, but a lot of landscape photographers are kind of introverted and shy, and they don't want to be around people. And
Yeah,
but even still, like introverts are human beings as well, right? And I feel like
yeah,
that what you're speaking to is that human connection piece that
yeah,
can come with photography, whether that's like sharing your work with people and getting their reactions and their responses, or whether it's like sharing a really special moment with another group of photographers or one other photographer or whatever.
hmm
I feel like that's the piece that that's like the glue that I find a lot of people, once they find that human connectivity, that the photography really starts to take off for them.
mm. Yeah. And I think like like you said, it's that personal touch, isn't it? As soon as I went full time, I never wanted to turn it into a business. And that sounds really weird, but like I always wanted it to just be me. I want to be approachable. I want people to know they can email me whenever, text me whenever. Like, yeah, it's a personal thing, and that's what scares me about the whole. How do I grow this? Like, how do I free up more time for family time now we've got a child? Like, I don't know if I can because like I can't clone myself. Like that
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is just me. So whether that's doing things online, like an online course or something that I've just launched, or newsletters, or ebooks, or I don't know. I have no idea where it's going to go, but it's trying to make the most of your time as best as you can, and just utilize it. And whether that's, you always want to do it as a hobby, so you just do it for you. Like, that's even better. Like, some of my really loyal clients, like, their photos go nowhere, and like, they're a way better photographer than me. Like, their wildlife stuff, I'm just like, oh my god, this is like Nat Geo level, like bears you've got and all of this stuff. But they're like, yeah, it's just for me. I'll make a book one day and it'll be a coffee table book, and I'll only do one of them. I'm like, oh my god, well, can you do two so I can have one? Because like, they're amazing. So some people are happy to just do it for themselves, or to share it with others. I think the really difficult one is when people start photography to make it a career. I feel that's a really hard thing, and I feel really bad for those people, because I don't know how you do it in this world. Like, I actually don't know how you approach that, because I'm doing a school talk on Wednesday at my old school, and one of the questions was like, how do we encourage the students to do this as a full-time career? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, you have to have so much, like, I don't know, so much legwork that goes into it. Like you were saying, like, all those years, it's not just a switch where you're like, I'm going to be a landscape photographer and run workshops. Like, no, that's not how it worked. Like, I don't know.
That mentality, I feel like, is what a lot of younger photographers have in their minds. Like, oh, all I have to do is, get an internship, or like, just build a website and I'll be out there. And it's like, having the wisdom and lots of years of failure and seeing what other people have found success in and all of that. It's, there's not a magical formula, but I will say this, that you kind of have to be made a little bit differently as a person. Like, you have to, I wouldn't say like be a workaholic, but be willing to be engaged in it a lot of time. Like, I watch a lot of baseball. I mean, people are going to think I'm crazy, but like, I probably watch, I don't know, like 16 hours of baseball a week at least. But during commercial breaks, I'm editing photos, or I'm doing social media, or like, I'm always doing something that's helping my business in some way. So, but I don't look at it like it's helping my business. Like, I'm just engaging in the things that I find interest in that may or may not lead to business. And so, I don't know, I think people think a little bit too hardly about it sometimes too. It's like, just be yourself and be passionate about it.
Yeah, exactly that. And I don't think you can force it. I think, like you said, if you are in the commercial breaks, or even during the baseball, you're editing or social media, like, that's a natural thing, right? You're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about what it could lead to. You're just doing it because you like it. Like, that's the important thing. And I think if you go from the other angle, you're only going to disappoint yourself if you don't reach certain targets. Whereas the other way around, if you reach a certain target, then it's the best thing in the world. And it could be the smallest thing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah, it's so important to, I don't know how you approach it if you do want to make it as a career. Like, unless you do other things beforehand. Like, yeah, that'd be a crazy good conversation topic for like a big group of photographers. Like, people that are full-time and people that aren't full-time. Like, it'd be amazing to like work that out. Like, what is the secret ingredient? What is it?
Yeah, and I mean, my guess is that it's gonna be, the secret ingredient is you, right?
Okay,
like,
true. Yeah, that you as the individual, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's just face it. Like, some people, you might be an amazing photographer, but what else?
Yeah, true. Yeah, you might not be a people person, or you might not know how to market yourself, or there's loads of things that come into it, isn't it? It's a big wide world for that.
I mean, the good news is, like, there are strategies that you can employ to become a more interesting person, right? Like, you can read more books, you can listen to more podcasts, you can.
Dude, I think that's so important, because like, I know when I cut out the news like 5-6 years ago now. Like, just stop watching it. I was like, I don't. What can I do? Like, I can't do anything. It's just making everyone depressed and whatnot. So I cut that out, and I got back into podcasts, ebooks, and just like, that was the only thing I'd listen to in the car, or while I'm working, or like calming music or something, and always trying to keep focused and always absorbing stuff. And that's literally how I did this. Like, when I started photography, it's just YouTube, right? I was just YouTubing everything. How to use aperture priority. What is shutter speed? How do you shoot the Milky Way? Like, all this type of stuff. and I never stopped. A lot of people think like since I've gone full time, they're like, oh, you mustn't have time for that. I'm like, no, I've just discovered YouTube Premium. Now there's no ads. Now it's even better. And now I can just leave it running. It's brilliant.
That makes so much sense. And what you just said, I feel like is so important for more people to hear. And what I took out of that is that you should never stop your flow of curiosity, and you should never stop learning.
Yeah,
No matter how good you think you are as a photographer, I promise there's something more you can learn, you know?
absolutely. Like last week when I went on the one-to-one with Ross, like I paid for that. Like it was a one-to-one. We were both professionals, but I was like, dude, I need to see you in action, and I want to like just have a day with you. Like, and that was me investing time in myself. Like, and we did that for 2 days, and like, I don't think you can stop that. You can't stop learning. Whether that's going out and surrounding yourself with different types of friends, I think that's really important. Like surrounding yourself with people that encourage you and push you and not bring you down. I think that's really important. Like my old workplace got like really toxic at one point, and I was like, don't even want to be here. Like I don't need that in my life. Like, so let's just surround myself with the people that I know that are going to push me and keep me going forward. So it's important to have that kind of motivation to always want to learn, and also just never think that you've completed it. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't think that'll ever happen. There's always something to learn, or some new software to learn, or new place to discover. Like you were saying, just go there with an open mind. And you might not get the photo the first time, but you will the second. Like, yeah, failures are good, like really good.
Yeah, I recently converted a camera to infrared.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Okay, that's cool.
And actually it was inspired by a couple of podcast episodes I did with people who are like super in infrared. I'm like, okay, fine, you convinced me, I'll do it. And I did a full spectrum conversion to my A7R4. And what's cool about that is like you can use different filters to get different wavelengths of infrared light, or you can switch it back to regular light wavelengths of visible light again.
Yeah.
And what's been crazy about that is I feel like I've picked up the camera for the first time again. Like,
That's
cool. I know how to use the camera better than I did 15 years ago, but I'm seeing the world completely differently, and it's like forcing me to like rediscover how to leverage what infrared can do and what it can see, and like all of the weird mistakes that it can create, and all of the like editing problems that it forces you to engage in. And like it's and so I'm like I know nothing about this now, and that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, because you find that so exciting, right? Because you're like going back to places you may have been before. You're like, this looks completely different. I need to think about this a different way. Or I love that look. I don't know much about infrared, but I love it when you get the white trees, like where everything goes white with the really like blue sky. Like, oh, I just look at that and I instantly think it's just like beautiful like artwork. It goes beyond photography, right? It blends those two together.
Yeah, and I've been using it mostly for black and white because
nice.
like you said, it renders like blue skies like super dark, and it renders greens and stuff like that super white. So it's super contrasty.
Yeah.
When you convert it, and you can, I think you're a Sony shooter as well. So like, you just change the
Sony. Yeah, I was on Canon now, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay, but you can change the creative profile to black and white, and
and
you can see how it transforms all the colors, and it's super fun. And actually, like on workshops, I feel like people are like, okay, I want to get that now. Or some people are like, okay, dude, we get it. Infrared's cool. Can you stop?
yeah. Because it's something different that you're not used to seeing with your eyes, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it's super fun.
That's good for summer months as well, right? Like whenever it's like tricky for traditional landscapes, like crack out the infrared and explore with it that way.
Well, exactly. What I found is that everyone's like packing their bags up, and I'm like, whoa, it looks so good right now. Like, where are you going?
What are you doing?
Yeah. It kind of opens up all new opportunities in light that you probably previously would have dismissed,
And I think that's so important because like I say this all the time to people, but you got cross transferable skills with that, right? Like you're taking your landscape brain and you're adding a new variable where it's like, whoa, like this is new. Like, what can I do with this? And you're like approaching it from a whole new angle. So your creative side of your brain's just going nuts. And it's the same when I do wildlife and macro. Like I'm no wildlife photographer, but I'm applying skills from landscapes into my wildlife. Like, and then it opens up a whole other world again. I'm like, oh my God, like this is endless. Like, there's so many skills that fly across in photography. Whether it's just changing from color to black and white, it could be something as simple as that. But it's having that new variable, isn't it, that keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, I'm the same way. Like I've been doing a lot more macro and street and wildlife, and
Nice.
like you said, it's you take the things that you've learned in landscape photography and you're applying it to the way you see the world in street or in wildlife, and then it's like, I don't know, it's just like reinvigorates your creative side, and it's if I feel like if someone's in a creative rut, that's a great way to get out of it, is like do something completely outside of your wheelhouse,
Yeah.
but apply the skills and knowledge that you already have learned and gained, and then see where it takes you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's just going to keep you fresh. And if it doesn't interest you for longer than 2 weeks, then like a lot of people will panic. But like, I think that's fine. Like, you'll realize very quickly, like, oh, it's not for me. Cool, I'll try something else. Like, that's a good thing. But you got to try it first. Don't be that person who's like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. Like, no, don't be that person. Try everything, and then like just go with what sticks or what you enjoy or what gets the hairs up on your arms, kind of thing. It's really important, isn't it? Because you could, I mean, I got told a lot that I was going to fall out of love with photography when I did it full time. It's like, oh, the business side of it and all this. And if anything, I love it even more now. Like, it's the opposite. It depends on how you approach it, doesn't it? And it's the same with anything. If you ever get into a creative rut, surround yourself with other people's work and just absorb as much as you can, because you're going to get inspired with something.
Yeah, I agree. And this is not that we need to hash this out too much, but I found that after being full-time now for about a year, I've found that now that 100% of my focus is on photography and not learning all this stuff for the nonprofit I was working at, and like understanding state regulations and dealing with personnel and, you know, all the stuff that goes along with managing a nonprofit. Now that I've kind of carved out most of my brain for photography, it's kind of opened up, like I'm playing video games again. Like I haven't played video games in, gosh, probably like almost a decade. And so it's been really fun just to have like free time again a little bit, which has been nice.
Yeah, because you need that time to switch off, right? Like you need that something that's like, it could be 2:00 in the afternoon where you'd normally be at work, but like to take those 2 hours out to recharge, and then you're working until 10, 11 o'clock at night on something else. Like,
absolutely. Like last night, I think I worked until like 1 a.m. But I wasn't, like you said, it didn't feel exactly. It didn't feel like work. I was just having fun.
Yeah. And that's the important thing, is you're having fun while doing it. And yeah, touch wood for both of us, it never becomes a chore. Like I would hate to work at 1 a.m. and be like, oh, I hate my boss. And then look back in the mirror and be like, oh, I am the
it's
boss.
me.
Like, damn it. So like, I failed myself. Like I never want to get to that point.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jack, this has been awesome. Last question. Who do you recommend that our listeners learn more about? Who are some people that have inspired your journey?
Oh, I could go on. I could do this around an hour. But okay, there's a few people. I mean, there's two people that like really got me into photography locally. So I'll give a shout out to those two. So Mark Bauer and Ross Hoddinott, great guys. They run a tour company, and they were big advocates for getting me into photography when I was looking through their books. And then for inspirational stuff, one of my favorites is Colin Prior. His processing and the way he does his mountainscapes and his enthusiasm for photography that's gone on for decades. Like, I love that and find that so inspiring.
Yeah, I don't know if you listened. Tim Parkin does a new podcast for On Landscape magazine, and they just had Colin Prior on, and he was talking about all of these adventures he did in the Himalaya with like a 6x17 film camera and stuff. I was like, wow, that's so cool.
It's insane. Like his story, I've heard him talk a few times now, and his stories, I'm just like, I just want to be in a room with this man for 8 hours. Just give me your life. Like, I want everything. Just like, tell me your biography. I want to know everything you've done, because it's so inspiring. I'm a big lover of books. So like, I have an unhealthy collection of books. So all of those guys have made lots of books, and you just get engulfed in them. It's the best thing you can do, I think, with photography.
Brilliant. Well, Jack, this has been awesome.
Oh man, absolute pleasure. Thank you. It's just been a wicked conversation. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got the voice back for now. I'll lose it again next week when something happens. I'll get too excited. I'll go all high pitch and lose my voice. It's bad.
I've been known to do that from time to
Yeah,
time as well.
yes.
Well, thank you to Jack for the awesome conversation this week on the show. I really had a great time, and I can't wait to see where you take your photography career. Keep inspiring us. As I mentioned in the introduction, Jack is offering a discount to listeners on his woodland photography online course with the School of Photography. Listeners can get 3 months of membership to the School of Photography for free. You pay for 9 months of membership and get 12 months of access. The best way to access this discount is by visiting the link in the show notes, as the discount is embedded within the link. Thanks for supporting other artists, including Jack. Cheers. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.